Good evening and welcome to my walk and talk. What's today? I think it's June the 10th, 2024. So, anything happening in the world these days? Oh yeah, I'm painting my house. You guys want to hear about that? It's almost as interesting hearing me talk about it as it is being here watching the paint dry. Anyways, I got out there this morning and it's on the east side, so I think I was out there about 9 o'clock, which was actually a little bit late, but yeah, I worked for about an hour or two and it just got hot, so that was it. And then I went back out there at 5 and got the rest of that east end done all the way up to the peak. It looks really good, so I was happy with that. So most of the rest of the day I spent inside, had a chance to do some reading, which is really my really enjoyable hobby. I'm reading Robert Sapolsky's book called Determined. I don't know if you know Professor Robert Sapolsky of Stanford. He's a philosopher, neurologist, studied the brain, etc. He's a brilliant guy, and he's written this book about free will. Ouch! My feet are killing me tonight from going up and down that ladder on that boom truck. Written a book about how we don't have free will, made a case for no free will. It's a pretty thick book. And I think I've probably mentioned to you somewhat about my own personal history with that subject, and that I met somebody 40 years ago that had written a book on it. And he was about 80 when I met him. His name is Arnold Soderbergh. The book that he'd written was called Gaihuya, and it's his case against free will. And he gave me a lot of literature on it. And he'd done some interesting things, like he had written a letter to all the living Nobel Prize laureates and put an Einstein quote in there about free will and asked them to comment on it, if they felt that humans had free will or not. And he got back a lot of responses, and he had them, he had this folder, and he made me a copy of it. And that one, I think I gave that one and the book away to my nephew, because I don't know, there's nobody in my family that's interested in it. And he's a pretty sharp kid. He's in his 30s now, but he's really smart. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to pass that stuff on. And it was one of those things that really meant a lot to me. It was very, very instrumental in the way that I ended up thinking about things philosophically. Anyways, after reading his book and reading all the other information and reading some other authors, and we're talking 40 years ago when there wasn't a lot of stuff on the subject then, other than stuff by the ancient Greeks and such like that. So I had kind of a limited variety of books to select from, but the ones that I did read, of course, the things by Voltaire and Spinoza. Spinoza was the philosopher that Einstein quoted, and Einstein's probably his most famous quote, other than E equals MC squared, was, God does not throw dice, meaning that there was no chance in the universe, that everything is determined. And of course, when he said that, the religious community picked it up, ran through the streets screaming, Einstein believes in God! Einstein believes in God! So that required Einstein to make another statement. And he said, I believe in the God of Spinoza. And whenever Spinoza wrote about God, used the word God, he always put in parentheses, nature. That was Einstein's God. So anyways, Robert Sapolsky's book, Determined, it's really quite interesting. But let me backtrack for a moment. Back to my friend Arnold Soderbergh. In his book, he had this, I don't know exactly what you would call it, but this apparition in your brain, and he called it Buster the Idiot. Said everybody's got it, and basically Buster is, what Buster does, ouch, Buster, he said that Buster plays with blocks all day. And what he meant by that was that when you have a problem And human beings are basically problem-solving mechanisms. When you have a problem, this force in your brain, in the process of trying to solve it, it has access to all the different bits of information in your brain that may give you a resolution. So what Buster does is he takes these bits of information and he quickly assembles them into a possible solution for whatever problem you're looking at. For instance, let's say you're driving and you get a flat tire. So you pull over, and if you're like me, the first thing you do is you say, okay, well, I'll just get my spare tire out and I'll just change it. I got the tools and I'll do that. That's Buster talking to me from years and years and years of experience of, my first encounter with automobiles. What's that thing in the trunk? Well, that's a spare tire. So you file that information away for later when you need it. So I get out of the car and I go to get my spare, and my spare tire is flat. Because, I never check the air in my spare tire. Any of you guys ever check the air in your spare tire? Probably not. After a while, even with it just sitting there, the air pressure goes down. So now I've got a spare tire, but the air, it's flat. So now Buster goes back to work, and he begins to look in the files and start to create some other structures out of these bits and pieces of information. I just think it's such a cute name, Buster the Idiot, because Buster doesn't care, he just has a job, and his job is to try to resolve problems. So, okay, I got a spare, but it's flat. Wait a second. I got a can. I always carry a can of that tire goo-goo. Just in case I get a low tire or something, I shoot a can of that stuff in there. It's only like $8 a can. So I grab the can of tire goo-goo, and it's empty. Apparently I used it or used half of it or whatever, so that doesn't work. Okay. So back to Buster. So now this is before I have a AAA card, or I'm somewhere where I don't have any reception on my cell phone, or I don't have a cell phone. Because, I didn't have a cell phone until what? I don't know, 2010 or something like that. I don't know when it was I got my first smartphone. So I'm by the side of the road. I got a flat tire. I got a flat spare. So what do? I put the tire up against my leg. I'm standing outside my car, and I put my thumb out. Person drives by. They see I got a flat tire. They stop. They pick me up. They say, okay, yeah, throw that tire in the trunk. I'll take you to a gas station. We'll get you fixed up. So that's what Buster does. Buster just, as Sodi said, he just plays with blocks all day. So reading Sapolsky's book on free will, and so many other people on the internet now that are so knowledgeable on this subject. Of course, Sam Harris, had debunked free will a long time ago. And there's several other people that are really good. So I don't know if you're interested in the subject or not, but the thing is that once you accept this idea, it does make it extremely difficult for you to be judgmental of other people. Now, don't misunderstand what I mean by that. People still have to be responsible for what they do, but people act in accordance with their genetic endowment and the environment that they've been conditioned into. For instance, religion. People are generally the religion of their parents or the culture that they grew up in. Born in Saudi Arabia, you're probably going to be a Muslim. Born in an Amish community, you're probably going to be an Amish. Although, like anything else, there's always exceptions. There are people who've been raised in Amish communities, people who've been raised in Mormonism, people who've been raised Jehovah's Witnesses. Dan Barker, interesting guy. It's such a small world. He graduated from Anaheim High School in 1967 in the same class that my wife graduated in. My wife went to high school with him. And he's probably, well, he's certainly one of the most famous atheists in the United States. And I had the opportunity to meet him and his brother. I hung out with his brother for quite a while. His brother's name's Daryl, and got to be good friends with Daryl. But Daryl, they have another brother. Both Dan and Daryl are atheists, but their other brother is born-again Christian. Mom and Dad were Christians. And Dan is such an interesting guy in that, he's born into this belief system, indoctrinated by his parents. And I don't know, he's like 16 years old or so. He goes to Mexico, and he's a street preacher down there preaching Christianity in Mexico, saving people for Jesus. And he's a very talented musician. Plays the piano, and had written at that time several stage plays that were Christian-themed stage plays that are still performed today, and he still gets royalties on them. And this guy's been an atheist since he was probably in his mid-20s, and eventually his parents became atheists, but not his brother, not his younger brother. I forget what his name is, but just go on YouTube, Dan Barker, look him up. He's the president or co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation that's located in Madison, Wisconsin. And they are involved in these legal battles regarding church-state matters, which brings me to Project 2025. You heard about this yet? This is like a manifesto. I just started reading it last night. I downloaded it offline in a PDF file. It's 925 pages or 930 pages. So I just got started on it last night, and I think I'm at about page 28. And basically what it is, it's a manifesto that was put together by or financed by the Heritage Foundation. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They were the organization that represented the Morongo Unified School District in the lawsuit that I had against them. I think it started in about 1984 regarding the government-ordered religious ceremony at the public school graduations. And so I sued them because they wouldn't give me equal time that the preacher got. And I said, hey, I'm a tax-paying citizen here in this school district. I help pay for these grounds and the salaries of the teachers and the administrators. That preacher doesn't. He doesn't pay any taxes. He doesn't pay any property taxes, and he doesn't pay any income tax. And you're giving him the exclusive right to get up there and give his opinion about something that hasn't been decided yet. So anyways, the Heritage Foundation ended up defending the school district, and it must have been about 8 years for it to wind its way until eventually got to the Supreme Court, and we won. And when I say we, there was a case just like ours that was on the docket before ours, and that case got settled, which settled our case too. And if you want to look it up, the name of our case was Sands Bertolet v. Morongo Unified School District. You can just go online and you can look up the details of it. So anyways, this organization, the Heritage Foundation, they've been around for quite a while. They are a Christian-based organization, and they produced this manifesto, and what they want to do is there are many jobs in the federal government that the president fills. And when the president takes power, whether it's a man or a woman, they can fire the people who currently have those jobs. And so Project 2025, because the inauguration of the new president will be January 20th, 2025, those positions can be vacated, and the president can look at this list that the Heritage Foundation is going to provide of people that are going to change the shape of the federal government. They want to eliminate a lot of the positions in the federal government. They want to eliminate a lot of the regulations, and they want to have an influence. They want religion to have a much stronger influence in the workings of the government. I don't want to say that they want a theocracy. I think that's what they want, but they won't just come out and say it. A theocracy, not unlike Iran, where you have the mullahs who are running the culture there. So right now we're supposed to be a secular country, and they want to have a lot more religiosity. And since we saw what happened to Roe v. Wade, 50 years Roe v. Wade was on the books, I can foresee a time when somebody could bring a lawsuit demanding that because of the First Amendment, they have the right to give a prayer at a public school graduation ceremony. Now, I have some knowledge of this since I was instrumental in bringing this lawsuit. And when we did this, and the school district said, no, we're gonna fight it, there were religious organizations that said, no. And we don't want the government sanctioning any religious ceremonies in school, because what's going to happen is that people that are not of that religion are going to demand an opportunity to express their religious point of view. Muslims, Jews, Wiccans, everything you can imagine. And I think one of the big organizations that was against this was the Southern Baptists. They said, no, we don't want that. And I think Jewish organizations were against it. So there were plenty of religious organizations that were against this. But I can see this coming, and I can see the Supreme Court, saying, yeah, because they okayed, what was it, a couple of years ago? There was a football coach up in Oregon. He was at one time the high school football coach at this particular school. And I think he had retired, but he was still, he's going to all the football games because he knew all the coaches and the players and everything. And after the game was over, he's going out to the middle of the field, kneeling down and having a prayer ceremony. And the players that wanted to join him came out there and had a prayer with them. Well, somebody objected, said, no, that's public property, and that's a violation of the First Amendment. And so he sued. He went to court, and the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. I don't know the details of the case, but he won. So he's, able to do that, and I don't know if anybody else has stepped up. Any Jews have stepped up. Any Muslims have stepped up and said, hey, we want to do our thing too. So this is what could be coming. And I don't expect you to read 925 pages of this document. It's very detailed, but I think it is important to be aware of it. Somebody asked Trump about it, and Trump said he doesn't know anything about it, which on the one hand I find believable because he doesn't read, but on the other hand I'm a little bit skeptical about it because many of the people that are signatures to this, many of the people that helped prepare this document, and they're all listed in the document, all the people that helped on this, many of them are former former hires of Donald Trump when he was president. What's his name? Cuccinelli? Forget his first name. Ben Carson is on the list. There's a bunch of people that worked for Trump. So, As time goes by, I'll read more about it, find out more detail about it, but that's what they want to do. They're sort of like termites, and the thing is that there's not enough of them to win an election. You know, there's more secularists, there's more Democrats, there's more independents. And if you look at the vote totals for the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 presidential elections, there's only been one that the Republicans won the popular vote in. That's 2004, George Bush Jr. over John Kerry. All the rest of them, the Republicans have lost the popular vote. So they figured another way to get into the government, because these positions are not elected positions. They're appointed by the president. The president can just fire a person that's in that position if they're not loyal to what he wants, or he can just eliminate the position or the agency. And they're going to eliminate a lot of agencies, a lot of environmental laws. You know, you read this manifesto, you'll see where this is going. So that's an interesting thing that's going on. And the other thing that happened today that I thought was interesting was George Clooney wrote a column in the New York Times calling for Biden to resign, or not resign, but serve out his term, but end his candidacy. And this is really interesting because I don't know, it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, he and Julia Roberts, they had a big fundraiser for Joe Biden in California. They raised something like $15 million or something. They had a big dinner and, you know, black tie type of affair. So George Clooney comes out and says, you know, we need another candidate. And he goes on to say, and this is really the damning part, he said, at this dinner, this was before the debate, he said, the Joe Biden that I saw at the debate was the same Joe Biden that I saw at the dinner. He was just compromised intellectually. So that's a big deal. And I think I said a few days ago that the thing that's going to bring Joe Biden down, he can be stubborn, he can be narcissistic, he can be an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, but the thing that will take him down will be when the money dries up. You got to have money to run for president. You got millions and millions of dollars, and I think the Republicans will probably spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion on the campaign. So once that money dries up, he's going to be gone. Hopefully it will happen quickly, because what is there, 115 days to go, 112 days before the election? That's not a lot of time. It's enough time, but the sooner he acquiesces from his pursuit of the presidency, the quicker we'll be able to get a process going that we can get another candidate. And so I was thinking about alternative candidates. And you know, if you watch the news much, particularly on YouTube, you're going to see most of this stuff, or on cable TV, where the pundits have suggested people like Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And these people are all good people. But I thought of somebody else. And of course, as I've said before, my first pick would be retired Admiral William McRaven, but he's shown no interest in doing it. So I don't want to pester him. So it's time to move on. So I got somebody else to pester that I think would be an excellent candidate. And that would be Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban. Smart guy, very well known, self-made billionaire, just an excellent talker. I don't know what his age is, but he's probably early 50s, so he's young, got plenty of pep and energy. And here's the bonus. Like Admiral William McRaven, he's a resident of the state of Texas. 40 electoral college votes. Boy, oh boy, would that ever help? I mean, we haven't won Texas since I think Jimmy Carter is probably the last one to win Texas. So that would be most helpful. So if you guys can think of any candidates, and it doesn't have to be a politician. It doesn't have to be a senator or a congressperson. It should be somebody who's fairly well known and has a really good reputation. If it's a man, good head of hair, looks handsome on television, telegenic is very important, can think on his feet, doesn't need a teleprompter to talk. Mark Cuban meets all of these qualifications. You might be able to talk him into it, but it would have to be, like at the convention, it'd have to be unanimous. There'd have to be a groundswell, and the Democratic structure, the superstructure of that organization is such that getting them to pick somebody outside of their organization is like, I don't know, pulling teeth out of an elephant or something. Pretty unlikely to happen, but we could always have a third-party candidate. Of course, in that case, Trump would probably win because it would split the vote. But we got to get somebody that the Democrats and the independents can get excited about, and even MAGA people can look at and go, Mark Cuban, he's a pretty good guy. We like him. We saw him on Shark Tank. He's pretty smart. I don't think he'd go on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and get away with it, but nevertheless, good man. So with that, it's starting to get dark. I'm thinking that's probably going to do it for tonight. So thank you once again for joining me, and click that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And if you can forward this to your friends, turn them on to my channel, I'd really appreciate it very much. So you guys have a good evening. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.